Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Hello and welcome to the Spooky Popcorn Podcast.
A weekly show regarding all things entertainment, including reviews. Spooky reviews.
Now let's get right into the news. So, Olivia Colman, known for Broadchurch and other things, but mainly Broadchurch, she's been cast as Queen Elizabeth II in the third series of The Crown, replacing Claire Foy. I did not expect this at all.
No, she's really not who I'd cast as Queen Elizabeth II, or who I would have ever expected for them to use to replace it. I mean, for me, I would never picture Olivia Colman on something like a Netflix show, so it's interesting to see her kind of branch out and try something different.
I mean, she's a brilliant actress. Everything I've seen her in, she's never given a bad performance or a bad or dull moment. But I just never saw her as Elizabeth II.
No, I think Claire Foy has at least got the benefit there in, as Jake said earlier, she actually looks like Queen Elizabeth II, whereas Olivia Colman does not look like her as much, unfortunately.
I'll be interested to see who they get to replace all the other cast. Because I've seen most of Series 1, but I'm still yet to finish it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm yet to start Season 2, but the thing that I loved about The Crown when it first came out is that they were giving a chance to show off some, not necessarily underrated actors, but actors who hadn't been around for a while. Like, I hadn't seen Matt Smith or anything in a long time until I saw The Crown. Claire Foy is an actress that I don't think gets enough press when she really should. She's been great in some really, small movies and TV shows. So it was nice to see her almost get, a big break on this scale. And that's something that I will dislike, losing the main cast, because I think that's something that Netflix has done a really good job on with this show.
And Claire Foy was on Graham Norton's show, and she seemed really nice, really lovely. And they said all along they knew that they were going to be replaced, and it's sort of going to be not an anthology, but they knew that they were going to get the cast switched out from the beginning and the outset. So it is a shame to see this cast go, because with John Lithgow, he's amazing. And
yeah, he's sensational.
Matt Smith's always a win.
Exactly. I think it is commendable, though, because certain shows don't have the confidence to replace their cast. The entire reason that the original TV series Heroes fell apart is because it was originally written as a show that would have a new cast every season, and yet they were then constrained to have to maintain that cast for the new season. Whereas when you watch shows like American Horror Story or Fargo, the fact that it replaces its cast each season makes it almost better, and it's because they've got the confidence to give this a try. And I think that's interesting that The Crown is willing to try and do the same.
Yeah, it keeps it fresh. That's why Doctor Who's been going on for so many years, because people still have their Doctor and the people that they like, but it still changes to sort of stay up to date and meet the modern day. It's like Jodie Whittaker coming in, and it just keeps it fresh, because if they just recast the first Doctor and they'd kept the frail old man, then people would have tuned out ages ago. But
it's prolonging the inevitable.
Although Black Mirror gets new people in every single episode, which isn't so kind on the budget, but works well with that sort of show.
Exactly. Speaking of Doctor Who so heavily, though, it's been recently revealed who Jodie Whittaker, the 13th, or is it 14th Doctor, who her companions will be.
13th Doctor.
Yeah, let's call her 13.
Yeah, John Hurt was... Well, it's all very complicated now.
Yeah, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Now all the controversy around Jodie Whittaker, the first female Doctor, settled down now. I feel like I can just say my opinion. I wouldn't have minded whoever they cast as the 13th Doctor. I just have a grudge against them, because what are they going to do with the Doctor Who calendars? There are no longer 12 Doctors, one for each month. Yeah. They're going to have to squish a few together. Yeah. What's going on there?
Honestly, people, marketing. It was almost as though you should have known to end the show when Peter Capaldi decided to leave. I am really excited to see this new cast, though. I'm a fan of particularly Mandip Gill, who are becoming a female companion, and Bradley Walsh is always a bit of
I love Bradley Walsh.
Yeah, he's always a bit of a joker, so you can have some fun there. I don't actually know the other guy. I don't think I've seen him in anything before, so it'll be interesting to see if he's able to break out into anything after this.
Yeah, one thing I do like about Doctor Who is they do tend to bring in some unknowns. So, like, it brought out Karen Gillan, Arthur Darvill, and, like, made them centre of attention to now move on to big things like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And Doctor Who is always in trying to find fresh things and fresh ideas. They do find new talent, which I do find commendable.
Yeah. My only concern regarding this bigger cast is, do they feel that they're confident enough regarding Jodie Whittaker's Doctor? Do they not feel she's going to be, like, good enough to kind of hold the show by herself? They need to pack in this many companions just to try and make it a bit more lively?
I wouldn't say that I have faith in Chibnall in the fact that he knows what he's doing, and maybe, well, I feel like Bradley Walsh will probably be the Nardole type character, so that they're more...
Yeah.
They're not in every episode, they're sort of in the background, and then they sort of get a larger role towards the end of the series.
Yeah, like if they did an episode where one week she's with Bradley Walsh, the next she's with Mandip Gill, and then for the finale or the premiere she's with all three together, and it kind of variates throughout the series. I think it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, as long as they have an actual reason to have all of them there, rather than to just pad it out like, oh, Bradley Walsh, I like The Chase, so I'm not going to watch that. So as long as they actually have a reason to have all those characters there, then I think they're on to a win.
I'm not a fan of Chris Chibnall myself. Like, when it comes to Doctor Who, I think everything else he's written has been sensational, but when it comes to Doctor Who, I'm a little bit shaky, so we'll just have to see where he kind of goes with it, really.
I have faith in him because he wrote P.S., the little addition to Angels Take Manhattan that wasn't actually filmed, but they recorded the animation too, and they published the storyboards online. And it's beautiful. It's Rory talking to Brian, his dad, after he'd departed from the show, and it was just really heartfelt and nice. So if he brings that into it...
Yeah, not just his very blocky and overstuffed story structure that he's had with some of his previous episodes and recurrent themes, I mean. But yeah, I'm confident for it. I think this cast looks great, and it'll be interesting to see what they can bring to the show.
I just need the new series, but after the Christmas special, it's then, I think we're waiting till September for Series 11.
Oh man, that's just...
I know they announced it a while ago, but did you hear about... It is rumours, they haven't actually confirmed it, but the new episode structure. So they're trimming it down from 13 episodes a series to 10 episodes a series.
Oh wow.
But instead of 45 minutes, they're making each episode an hour long.
That will be interesting to see, because if they're now cutting out or shortening down the exposition section of the episode, that means we've now got an extra 45 minutes to really get into the episode and see what it is that they're doing. It will kind of recover something that I think is wrong with the series in general. My idea would be to make pretty much every episode a two-parter, so you've got more time to enjoy and explore said story, but hopefully if they do this will be less of a problem, because now there'll be more time for them to use, and they don't have to dedicate so much of it to exposition for each sole episode.
Yeah, and in general, the whole series will be longer, because the added 15 minutes to each episode outweighs the lost episodes. And also, something that has sort of been a common theme in the revived series of Doctor Who, now that they're not doing serials the same, is very much... They set up this big world-ending thing every episode, and then it's just sorted out from a point of the sonic screwdriver. So hopefully this way it means that they can actually get the writers to tell the story that they want to tell and not have to condense it and shorten it down.
Yeah, exactly. Also in the news this week, we have received news that Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin will be making a triumphant return to Daredevil in Season 3, and also Daredevil will be replacing showrunners to... I don't actually know the name of the man at all, but I'm still really excited to see these two kind of change-ups to the show, really.
Yeah, I love Vincent D'Onofrio. He's a brilliant actor. He's proved himself so many times, and he is great Kingpin from what I've seen of him.
Yeah, he brought a real kind of chilling nature to the role, and he kind of became my primary reason for watching the show in that first season. And I think it'll be interesting to see a new showrunner coming in to bring some like changes or bring in some fresh ideas to the direction and story of the show, because I feel with Daredevil, as with the rest of the Netflix shows, they're all kind of becoming very same-ish and a bit blocking the similar themes in each of which, and you kind of need someone to really shake this one up, given that it is the granddaddy of the whole Defenders universe.
It's sort of like Arrow in the whole Arrowverse, as it's called, over on the CW.
Yeah.
It's very much... It had a very popular first series that then branched off the others. And now that one's sort of...
About it.
Yeah, it's been forgotten about and people are saying it's stale and it needs to be shaken up. And then now that seems like the direction that they're going in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's hope that Daredevil can at least keep us watching, unlike Arrow. I'm sorry, it's just not good anymore.
I only watch The Flash out of those.
Same. Legends of Tomorrow is just... don't go near it.
If
you ever liked DC, if you ever liked Vandal Savage, stay away from Legends of Tomorrow.
I'm just trying to finish the first series of Legends of Tomorrow just so I can be like, okay, I'll finish the series. I know fully like what it's like. I'm not going to watch it anymore because I only have like 2 or 3 episodes left. Yeah. And it's just a pain to get through.
It really is. It becomes a chore, and you know when a TV show becomes a chore, you should not be watching it.
I'm only motivated to watch it because it goes off Now TV in like 10 days or something. So after that, I'll only be watching The Flash and the big crossover episodes.
You have my sympathy, friend. You have my sympathy.
And that then leads us into some very saddening news about Kevin Spacey. That it's still a very unfolding story. It only came out, to my knowledge, this morning.
Yeah, same.
So we're not going to talk about it this week. We're going to talk about it next week when we know more of what's actually happened and then we understand the full story rather than trying to rush into it. And
yeah, we feel that given this is such a sensitive issue that has been brought up in the news, and given how much we respect and love the actor, myself, incredibly, he's my personal favourite actor of all time, we feel for that reason we should take some time to find out fully what's gone on, and hopefully next week we'll be able to discuss that with you.
In a bit more upbeat news, there's a Logan spin-off focusing on X-23, which is actually being developed by James Mangold himself, who directed, and I think he wrote The Wolverine and Logan. And I find this very exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the real highlight was Daphne Keene's Laura character, or X-23 as she's more commonly known. So to see her come back as one of the best parts of Logan, and with that same amazing director, it would be interesting to see kind of where they decide to take this series.
Do you think it'll be like 15 again, like a 15 age certificate, or do you reckon there'll be more PG-13 because it is just the younger cast?
I'd like to hope that Mangold is somehow willing to keep it at 15, but I think the fact that you are moving into a younger cast and that she's clearly going to be put into a team, and that you can't really have a full movie of children doing scenes like there were in the first Logan movie, I don't think you could have that sort of thing. So I think, in all honesty, it will decrease to a PG-13, and then who knows, there may even be an extended edition someday, but I don't think we're going to see the same kind of level of violence and language that we saw in Logan.
And do you reckon the story is going to continue to them going up to Canada with Alpha Force? Or is it Alpha
X-Force, something like that.
Yeah, the Canadian X-Men, basically.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see kind of where Logan left off, but at the same time, Logan was just such a nicely ended story. It was just kind of all put together in a nice little bow. I don't feel you need to see anything more of that. I would prefer, if they're going to do this, they set it at least a few months or potentially even years after that Logan, and they set it somewhere completely different, so that in at least scenery and somewhat tone, it isn't too resemblant of Logan, because then I'd feel you're just trying to copy off what was one of the best films of this year, and I don't think it would work well.
I'd love for them to have a time jump, and even if they then have to wait 2-3 years, I don't want them to lose the actress because she was so good. I don't want them to recast her. So I do still want a time jump so they can sort of allude to the past, like they did in Logan with the whole what did Professor X do to the X-Men, because they sort of cut it out on the radio.
Exactly.
If they did that sort of similar thing with, so they only allude to what happened directly after Logan rather than spelling it out.
Even if we just saw like a really kind of small sort of indie film where it's her just in a building and she has to try and get out and just slaughter a bunch of people to get out, I'd still pay money to go and see that. But
Like The Raid.
yeah, I'd definitely pay money to go and see the X23 version of The Raid.
Speaking of The Raid, see a nice segue there. Speaking of The Raid,
Segues are becoming too common.
the director of The Raid has it been announced or is it just a rumour?
It's been announced, yeah.
He's been announced to be directing the solo Deathstroke film, the obviously Batman villain. I'm really excited for this.
What upsets me is that you call Deathstroke a Batman villain, because he's not. He's the whole DC universe. They've all fought him at different points.
Yeah,
but I'm still very excited to see it done. The director of The Raid 2, it's about embarrassing that I don't know his name, produced one of the greatest action films I've ever seen. And I think, seeing as how this is a very action-centric character, it'll be interesting to see what he's able to kind of bring to this movie.
Although this raises two questions for me. One, what does this mean for the Batman solo film? Because he was supposed to be the villain in that. And two, are they keeping the same cast? Like, are they keeping the same dude they cast as?
Yeah, Joe Manganiello.
I love him.
He is really good looking, I must admit, but I don't personally think he will be in the Matt Reeves Batman film. For the kind of film that I think Reeves is trying to make as like a detective, kind of a noir movie, Deathstroke is just not the character that fits into that kind of story, so I personally think that he won't appear in the movie. I think Joe Manganiello and the whole Deathstroke idea kind of lived and died with the Ben Affleck version of this movie, and now I think that that's firmly in the ground. Manganiello will either pop up in this Deathstroke movie and be the Deathstroke, or it'll be someone new who's brought in. I don't personally think he'll be in the Matt Reeves movie, unfortunately.
If he is in the Matt Reeves film, then I imagine it will be in like a credit scene. But with the Batman solo film, I just really want a Sin City style Batman detective film. Yeah. And I know that it has to fit in with the whole tone of the rest of the DCEU, but if they're doing Flashpoint, then they could make some excuse for it, just so that we can have one of the best actors to portray the Caped Crusader in a very stylized Sin City visual tone.
It's exactly what I'm hoping for when we receive this Batman movie. Don't make it for the kids. Make it for us, the fans who have grown up with these series. Make it so it's Long Halloween, at least in tone, so it's very similar. You give me Anthony Hopkins as Calendar Man, because that would be sensational. You're all thinking it. It would be amazing. And then you just let this be the noir movie that it needs to be.
Would you want Leto's Joker in it, or just avoid him completely for this one?
After what he was like in Blade Runner, yeah, I say we give him another chance. I think Reeves will do something different with him, and if he is going to include him, I think he'll know that there is backlash and he'll certainly be in a smaller role.
He can't really be in a smaller role. He was hardly in Suicide Squad as it was, well as it is, let alone being any smaller. It would just be like in the background behind someone in 3 frames of the film.
Well, that's what I loved so much about the Lego Batman movie. It gave the character spotlight to some of the lesser known villains. So for that reason, you have to give it to characters that we haven't seen in the movies before, or at least in a very long time. Give us a new version of the Riddler. I can think of, give me time and I can give you 5 good actors who would be good to play the Riddler, who would bring something different and interesting to the role, and who would not only destroy the Jim Carrey performance as the Riddler. I'm sorry, it just hurts to talk about that movie. But give us that, and maybe some characters that we haven't seen before, like Calendar Man, and I think you'd receive a very interesting movie. It would be brilliant to see Deathstroke in this movie, but I think for what it is aiming to do, Deathstroke's not the right fit.
The Batman name and brand is enough to sell this film alone.
Yeah.
They don't have to add the Joker. They don't have to add the ones we've seen a lot of in film. So I agree with Zach in the fact that bring in some of the lesser known ones or one that we haven't seen in a while.
Or maybe go the way of Rocksteady and you really pull your trousers up and you try and make a new villain. They did a good job with Arkham Knight, even though it was very predictable as who he was going to be. Maybe give something a different try in this movie. Maybe try and do a different spin on that character. It's the primary reason why Mr. Freeze, as beloved as he is because they did him so well in the animated series. So just maybe give it a try with a character in this. Please do Calendar Man. He needs his time in the sun. He's a good Batman villain.
And so the final news segment this week is that Ben Mendelsohn has been rumoured to be the villain in the new Captain Marvel film. Yeah.
I like Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah, I love him, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, he was in a good little indie film I saw the other week, Una, with Rooney Mara. He was really good in that. It'll be interesting to see him come to this universe because he'll be playing a villain and he'll be a great actor playing a villain in one of these movies. Not to say that the others aren't, but there just isn't really much to say about this until we know what the actual film is going to be like.
But the Marvel Cinematic, the MCU is notorious for having fairly weak villains apart from Loki. And they get in these amazing actors. So they've had Christopher Eccleston, they've had Mads Mikkelsen, and they just give them meh.
Yeah. I think the fact that in this whole older generation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like you had your core team of like the Iron Mans, the Captain Americas, the core villain though was always Loki. And the fact that they're going forward to try and make this new cinematic universe, retaining one or two old characters, but primarily new ones, like with the Captain Marvel, like with some Black Panther, like with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Hopefully it'd be interesting to maybe see if Ben Mendelsohn becomes that core villain that then they return to in later movies, or that brings in other villains to try and expand some of the story, or to become the big bad of the later story that they're ultimately going to tell.
Well, does that mean that he's either working with or he is a Skrull? Because they said that they're introducing the Skrulls in Captain Marvel, and then I'm not sure if this is still the plan, but they said they were going to try and still continue the Skrull storyline into Avengers 4. So I'm not sure.
I think we can't really make a comment on who he will be until we've seen at least something about what this movie is going to be about, or just even like in tone. I don't think a comment can really be made, but I think regardless, he's something to be excited about for this movie.
Yeah.
Right, so seeing as how it is Halloween, and we've been talking about the news, it's time for us to get down to the horror. We're going balls to the wall, all the gore, all the blood, all the guts, and we're going to be discussing horror movies, getting down to what spooky popcorn was meant for. The film that we're really going to be discussing today, though, is a film that I recently have asked Jake to watch because I thought he would have loved it, and I think he does, and that is the 2013 remake of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead.
Love it.
Yeah, I rarely think that remakes are good, but to me, this is one of, if not the best remake I think ever made. Especially when you can say that Sam Raimi loved it as much as he did.
I think what works about this one is it understood what made the first one so loved and what made it work, and it was the gore factor. It was the blood, and it wasn't the character. Well, apart from Ash, it wasn't necessarily the characters. It was more the psychological torment of what would you do if you were in that situation? Yeah. Would you be able to kill your loved ones? And it did that, and it subverted it as well as working and running with it, and I loved it.
Yeah, I think knowing that the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 are two just icons of cinema in themselves, not just horror, to then hear that we're having a remake made of this movie, you know you've got to pull something extraordinary out of the bag just to get people to come to the theatre, because the Evil Dead was so incredible. But to see this new one go to such lengths of just gore and torture and just pure damn horror put on the screen, you knew you had something good on your hands, and you knew that this was going to be what was great, and that any doubts you had about it would be quickly destroyed, given how great this movie is.
So we're going to stay non-spoilers for a while, and then we're going to go spoilers, even though it is a couple of years old, so people have probably seen it.
Don't expect too much restraint on spoilers for this movie.
I thought the performances in this were very good. Like, they were very dark and twisted, and it had the girl from...
Suburgatory, Jane Levy, and Don't Breathe.
Yeah, love Don't Breathe.
Yeah, an amazing horror film. And I think in this film, they hired, actually, in my experience, bad actors. Because before I'd seen films like this or Don't Breathe, I didn't think much of Jane Levy. I didn't think much of the...
Suburgatory was great. What are you on about?
Shut up.
Has Alan Tudyk's seal of approval.
Shut up. I thought the girlfriend to the main boy in the movie, I've seen her in some stuff in the past, and her dreadful British accent on Supernatural was not wanted. Not wanted at all. But in this film, every single member of the cast really, really surprised me. I thought they were really fleshed out. I felt all of them had their moment. Each one had a scene that was like, oh god, yeah, that's horrible. Oh man, they went there with that. And I often find in some horror films that the actors are trying too hard and that they're not enjoying themselves. I think the cast in this one really were quite enjoying themselves, and there was a little bit of that rapport between them, and I liked that.
They say that if the actors are having a lot of fun on set of a comedy, that then means that it's very unlikely that comedy will actually then be funny. But with a horror, I think that works well, because you can tell that the whole cast is just there having fun. They love the original source material, and they just want to make it work and don't want to disappoint the fans.
Yeah, exactly. I often find that with a lot of films, they just throw in the stereotype characters because they know that's what the audience wants to see. That's why I don't like the Friday the 13th remake at all, because that's literally what they did with the cast. Whereas in this film, they are careful with the characters that they want to put in. They put in characters they know that are going to be useful to the story, and they don't put in all these stereotypes. They just put in characters that they know we've got specific set pieces that we want to show off with them later. And I think that's where it really benefits from it.
I was very reluctant to watch this film because I'm not that keen on remakes. I thought I loved the original so much, I don't think that it will be able to live up to it. But then Zach and I were talking, we were like, oh, what films could we talk about for the Halloween special? And then Zach said about this one. And then I finally sat down and I watched it, and I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. It's fun. And then towards the end, there's one specific bit where you start laughing because of how crazy it is. And then you're like, why am I laughing at this? It is raining blood.
Yeah, the blood is something that really just is the epitome of what this film is all about. It's 100% gore fest. Like, I haven't seen a more violent film than this, other than maybe The Green Inferno. This was, to me, the most gory horror film that I think I've ever seen.
Goriest horror film, yes, but goriest non-horror film.
Well, no.
I would say the goriest non-horror film I've ever seen is probably Drive with Ryan Gosling.
Yeah,
because the scene with the shotgun and the elevator, just all of that.
I give you that. Green Inferno is worse though.
Yeah.
Cannibalism, look that up. Actually, no, maybe don't look cannibalism up.
Battle Royale. Now that is a gory film.
Oh, fine, you go there. But I do really think that this film deserves merit on the technical feats that it was able to achieve. The body horror in this film is amazing.
It's extraordinary, and with little to no CGI, it's amazing how they've done most of this in camera.
Yeah, like the scene where he's pulling the needle out from underneath his eye, or when she's like cutting off her bottom jaw with the knife. It's disgusting, and yet it's some of the most commendable like prosthetic and body makeup work that I think I've ever seen in a horror film. And even the set itself is sensational. They build like a really, like, I know it's cliche, cabin in the woods, but to me they've built the epitome of cabins in these movies. Like, it looks disgusting. It's just foul place to be, and it just really shows the loneliness of these movies.
And even though it is out there, the prosthetics and practical effects look so good that there's a scene with a nail gun in this that you are still like, no, and you're trying to like block it, and it just so commendable to the practical effects team. Just such a triumph and win on their behalf with what they were able to achieve with this.
I think the story is also very commendable, like how you've got the elements from the original. I think the great thing about this film is that it knows it's a remake, and that there are certain points where it revels in it. Like the scene where you see the Necronomicon, it's got the shotgun next to it, and it's pretty obvious. And then when you got the moments with the chainsaw, like, it's not smashing you over the head with nostalgia, but it's just a little nod. It's just like, yeah, we know we're trying to use it respectfully. We're trying to make it so you'll enjoy it.
I loved the scene where the bloke's rummaging around in the cupboard, and then it lingers on the chainsaw, and then it goes away from that. Yeah. And I thought that was a nice little nod, and then they go back towards it later. So I thought it establishes that it's a nice little nod, and then they work with it again. So I thought that's a respectful way to do it. And also, this isn't a big world-ending horror plot. It's just a small contained cabin story, and it works because you care about the characters, and they establish who they are and what they're like at the start, and then you realise the relationship that they all share between them, and then you feel sympathy and pathos for some of them, and then some of them you're like, you're just a dick, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. There are sensational shots in this movie, and we are going to go into spoiler territory at this point because there are certain scenes that I just want to speak about.
Yeah.
For me, the best part of this entire movie is the opening.
I love the opening.
Yeah. You do not expect the opening to end in the way it does. You do not expect that to be what it is, because up until this point, the sympathy you feel for the girl about to be burned alive is beyond what you can see. Her father is literally covering her in gasoline. Men have kidnapped her from the woods, and you do not expect just for that turn to come out of her with that just demonic voice, just, I will burn your goddamn soul. It's absolutely just terrifying, and a really great small twist.
I thought like all of them were possessed, or all of them were taken over, and then that's why they're all doing it, because it makes you feel sympathy for her, and then how it then just goes, no, she is the demon, she is what they're trying to fight, she's the antagonist. It's like,
and what's so great,
it just left me speechless.
Yeah. What's so great about the scene as well is the fact that when she goes evil, she does the first line in her normal voice, and then he just looks at her. We don't see her, and then when it cuts back to her, she just looks up and screeches, and she's got the demon eyes, and that was just a really great like jump scare moment. Even though I traditionally don't like jump scares, this one was an amazing excuse for it. I think the final scene as well, when she's being buried alive and she's got the bag over her head and she's just giving him the smile in this movie.
Oh.
Yeah. After you see this movie and you see how many times that she smiles, like when she's got the bag on her head or when she's like vomiting and he's trying to drag her away, it genuinely made me believe she was possessed. If I met this woman in real life and she gave me that smile, I would beat her to death or try to exorcise her or something, because like the original guy who played Nosferatu, she was the actual monster of this movie. I have no doubt in my mind she was really possessed.
I think she needs to get a restraining order on Zach.
Yeah, she scared me in this movie a hell of a lot.
I loved how when she was going through that small panel in the shed towards the end, and then they just start throwing things like through the wall, and then you just see it go into her knee. Again, props to this practical effects team. They know exactly what they're doing, and it just shows, especially for body horror, that practical is the way to go rather than CGI, because CGI can be very noticeable, whereas practical, it's like, how did they do that?
Yeah. I often found when I was watching this movie that it brought me back to Peter Jackson's Brain Dead.
Yeah, definitely.
Another amazing body horror film that had just such amazing practical horror and practical effects just throughout the entire film. And I felt like, although it's paying homage to the original Evil Dead, it was in ways paying homage to that. The level of gore that was in that film and just the attention to detail and making a great script and cast work was also immensely present in this movie for me. Something else that I also love is that this film, it ends on a sunset. She's killed the monster. she's walking off into the sunset. It's a very 1990s we save the day ending, but it really does kind of work for this movie because it revels in that camp factor at the end. And I think after you've just been through like an hour and 40 minutes of just the assault on your senses that is the body horror in this movie, you kind of need that as well.
And then also sequel baits, but in an interesting way, like the camera just goes right back into the book.
Yeah.
And it does it in a respectful way rather than at the end of, say, Green Lantern, where he then puts on the ring. It's like, Mark Strong, you're better than this.
100% better than Sinestro. But yeah, I think, again, it's another interesting callback to the original. Like, I was really hoping there'd be the scene where Sam Raimi rides on the motorcycle directly at Bruce Campbell's character and they try and do something like this. But the fact that they don't pull off that final scare is something for me that just works, and the fact that it just zooms back straight into the Necronomicon just works for me.
Do you know what physically pains me? I was on IMDb and I wanted to look at Sam Raimi, so I start searching Sam Raimi, and then it says, you know, on the suggested searches it comes up with like what they're best known for. It's like actor on or writer of. For Sam Raimi it said writer of Spider-Man 3. It doesn't say he was director of the all-time classic Evil Dead. It doesn't say he's the director of the all-time classic first 2 Spider-Man films. Or even so Oz the Great and Powerful. It doesn't even talk about that. It just says Spider-Man 3.
And on that note, I think we've had enough of the Evil Dead.
It's on Netflix. Check it out if you haven't already. It's an absolute blast.
Yeah. One of the best remakes, I think, that's ever been done. It's respectful, it's well made, and it's a hell of a lot of fun, especially for Halloween. Get your friends over, get a sick bucket for one of them, grab a pillow.
There's always one.
Yeah, this is an amazing group horror film because you'll all be just going yuck throughout the whole film.
Obviously, with it being Halloween, that then means another year, another series of The Walking Dead usually starts around this time. And last week we got the 100th episode of the entire series.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy this episode. I really think they forgot it was their 100th episode. It seemed to me that other than for 3 minutes where what they did with Carl, it honestly didn't seem like they cared that this was their 100th episode and that they'd come this far. It just seemed like the more generic plot that we had throughout all of season 6 and 7.
I enjoyed the episode. I felt that it was a good setup to what's going to happen in the upcoming series. But apart from Old Man Rick, apart from
the Carl scene where he's re-imitating Rick from the first episode.
Yeah, the Carl scene, and then the big shot at the end where it's imitating the tank bit.
Yeah, that was something that I loved.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah. But apart from that, it was just a standard episode. Yeah. Although not every series does celebrate its 100th episode. Like it did with Supernatural, with that pretty good episode. But for example, the new series of Doctor Who, the 100th episode was Crimson Horror.
Yeah, and we all know how that turned out.
that was a passable episode at best. Like I still enjoyed it, but it didn't particularly celebrate it at all. And it doesn't always have to be a big thing, but I think it was very much a second thought rather than having a big event.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed this episode. I couldn't look past the fact that they'd let me down so much on this front. I felt the fact that this was such a celebrated show. It was the #1 show on network TV for the longest time. It has such like a craft to it, such a tight and really good cast. I thought something bigger would have honestly been done to celebrate it, or at least they would have pushed for something in that first episode, and it just wasn't achieved. It was a good episode, there were great segments to it. It's just that I was kind of left with that sour taste because throughout the whole episode I was just waiting for that one thing that would just make it special. And besides the tank scene for me, the car scene, it kind of really didn't do it.
I feel that if they did something different in Series 7, so it went into a different direction, and then they then had the Series 7 opener as the 100th episode, that would have then been something very special and very commendable, because they would obviously have had the big two things that I'm not going to spoil if you haven't seen it. But that would have then, even though the series as a whole, not a lot of people enjoyed, I still enjoyed it. And that episode, The Day You Won't Be, I think that's called. If that was the 100th episode, then that would have definitely been a decent one that celebrated it and then said, we're now going to then continue the story like this. Rather than just setting up what's hopefully going to be a promising series.
Yeah, I think no doubt it's going to be a promising season. I think we're going to receive some really great action. I think now that they're promising the individual character episodes are going to go, which is unfortunate in some ways, but I think we're going to get a lot more story this season. But I really just kind of was left with that sour taste. And then when they can commemorate George A. Romero with this episode, you don't commemorate him with this episode. You commemorate him with Clear, or the episode with Eastman, or Where the Governor Died. You do it with a good episode, not this one.
I hope they also did that in memory of the stuntman.
Really respectful.
Sadly passed. I hope they do that at the end of every episode this series, like they say in memory of both of them every episode, because then
I don't think they will.
I don't think they will, but then it will also be on the good episodes that they can be remembered, as well as these ones. You want to go into spoilers?
Yeah, I'm happy to go into spoilers. I think he had a perfect shot. Shot, and the only reason they didn't take it is length, because this is now the Jeffrey Dean Morgan show. AMC has spent so much money on getting him here, they know they've got to use him for as long as they can. They won't kill him off, because he's got so much more to do in the story to come, but it just... When you can show the audience that you're that close, and that you don't take it, because you just want to increase the length of the story, it's kind of just spitting in my mouth.
Even if they just put it in a different scenario, so instead of him being in the emptied out RV shell, even if they just had him behind a short wall and Rick was there waiting for him to pop up to then shoot him, then that would have then made more sense, because they didn't know how long he'd been there. But there was a direct, massive, gaping hole behind him, and Rick could have easily just shot him right there and there. And they wasted so much ammunition on those windows.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yes, it's inconvenient that they now have to try and sort out their windows, but it's not like they have Eugene anymore where they can make the ammunition. Negan has Eugene, so they're going to be the ones making the ammunition. And even though they know where it is, and even though they know that Eugene's the one that can make the ammunition, why haven't they destroyed or sorted that plant out so that they can't then create their own?
Exactly. Something I really did like is that way in which this does kind of show that a little bit it's the 100th episode. This was an episode very central on the core group. I know that you've got to show off the big new characters like Ezekiel, like Negan, like Dwight, but those are characters that I don't care about at all in comparison to the likes of Carol, Carl, Maggie and Daryl, and to see them all having screen time and big parts in the story that we saw in this first episode, it was kind of what I wanted, because I felt there wasn't enough of that in Series 7. There was just too much time on these new characters, so it was nice to see them come back.
And I loved how Negan came out and he was like, sorry, I was in a meeting. And then Gregory then emerges and it's like, well, that's where he was. What a dickhead.
Yeah.
And then how the Hilltop then sides with Maggie, and that was just then such an empowering moment, and you felt like how far Maggie had come. And something I hadn't noticed from the Series 7 opener, after the tragic events of what had happened, the first one to stand up was Maggie. And a producer said that on The Talking Dead afterwards, because they were talking about Maggie and her character development, and then she said how they were the first ones to stand up.
Besides Carol, Maggie is for me the best character on the show, and it is wonderful to see that they are paying such attention to her character.
That's why I love I think it's Series 6, they had the episode where Carol and Maggie were both taken.
Well, it was one of my favourites of that season, to see those really different characters come out of it, to see the grizzled and hardened survivor that is Carol to then by the end of the episode be like, oh, I can't do this anymore, to then also see the little bit more weak Maggie be like, yeah, let's go and kill these people. Like, it was a stupidly good evolution of character put into 45 minutes. So, besides Carl, who is a clear goner for this series, who do we think is going to die this season?
A lot of people are saying Morgan, and I really don't want it to be Morgan because I love him.
Yeah, Morgan is my favourite character on the show. I've loved him since the first episode, and that scene where he couldn't shoot his wife. It's heartbreaking, but...
All I do is clear.
Yeah. I think he is just reaching his natural stopping point. He's dead by this point in the comics. He hasn't got a lot to do on the show. He spent a lot of season 7 just as an exposition machine, in my opinion. And while it's nice that they're spending time to devote, like, screen time to his, like, constant battle with, like, having to kill again and, like, that kind of moving away from his pacifistic nature is interesting to see. I think they are kind of just, like, treading water with Morgan's character, and I think he is going to have to go at some point.
So our predictions of deaths this series... Coral. Morgan.
I'd say Morgan has to go. Stephen Ogg's character, I think, will be killed off in some small way.
Which is a shame.
Yeah, which is great. Cause
I think he's great in it.
Yeah, he's a really interesting character.
On Talking Dead, when he came out, everyone was just cheering, Trevor!
Trevor! Because he is. He's just playing Trevor Phillips in the Walking Dead universe.
Well, as long as he continues in Westworld and we are still seeing him, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, he is confirmed to have a bigger role in season 2 of Westworld, so that's great. I think if we had to lose someone else from the core group, though, I could maybe, at a push, seeing it going to maybe Daryl.
I do not think that they will kill Daryl.
I think if they wanted to, like, if they've come to a point where it's like, yeah, we want to kill Daryl because he's doing nothing, this is the point. Because, again, he did nothing in season 7. He had his really cool, like, prisoner arc, but, like, he's doing nothing at the moment. He's just walking around.
We're on easy street, and it feels so sweet.
It's just, I don't know what's more torture, having to, like, watch these terrible episodes or having to, like, just hear that song relentlessly.
I feel like I was very harsh on this first episode of Series 8 because I did enjoy it and it's set up well for what's to come, like with Negan and Gabriel, because I feel that that will be a really interesting chemistry to explore.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't care a lot about Gabriel, but I still admit it's an engaging character. And I admit, I've shat a lot on this episode as well, but that's just because it didn't have that one scene for me and there were gaping plot holes in the story. Regardless, though, it was a stupidly well shot episode. It was amazingly well acted, and it does set up a real promising precedent for the rest of the series.
And it does what The Walking Dead does best, and that is character. Like we have seen since Series 5, Father Gabriel's progression from being a deserter, just being like, I can't handle this, to now him being like, no, I'm going to stay and I'm going to save Gregory. And then Gregory just, Gregory. Then Gregory just drives off, leaving him with Negan, which I'm very excited to see.
Yeah. If it's got to be the Jeffrey Dean Morgan show, at least put him with some good characters.
So just before we round off on The Walking Dead, prediction corner, Coral, Morgan. You're saying Daryl. I don't think they're going to.
No, I don't think Daryl will go. I just think it's the right moment to maybe get rid of him if they've got to.
And I feel that I reckon they're going to kill Tara.
Yeah, Tara's reached her point as well, I'd maybe say.
Do we think we're going to see the return of Heath at all?
Good God, no. If he comes back, do not care, and would be surprised.
So, Coral, Morgan, Tara, and Stephen Ogg's character, the henchman to Negan.
Yeah. They're goners.
So those 4 are our main predictions, and we don't think Shiva can come in and save Coral this time. The Walking Dead will be a series that we review weekly on the show.
Yeah. We have a dedication to seeing this show through.
Yeah, I started with Series 1.
Yep.
I loved it, and now I'm just
Yep.
no
I've gone through it year by year. I started in 2010 and I've kept on going ever since.
I started a bit later, and ever since that first episode, I was hooked.
Yeah.
I could not take my eyes off the screen, and even though the quality has dipped, it is still something that I'm very enthusiastic about maintaining watching, because even if it is just like the 3 episodes of series that are outstanding, I would say it's just worth it for that, and interesting to see where they take the characters. So this is going to be a show where we review each episode weekly as it happens.
Yeah, do expect more Walking Dead content from us, even if it was never as good as the very first episode. Right, so now seeing as how we haven't got very many new movies to review, we're going to do a discussion segment, something that you can hope to see in regular episodes of the Sour Popcorn podcast. This is going to be where we discuss our all-time favourite horror films. We're going to be discussing what we feel some of the best ones ever made are, and what some of the ones that you should really just get out there and see, both modern and classic. The standard structure will be one of us will present our offering, and then we'll discuss it, and then we will accumulatively determine what is the official Sour Popcorn top horror films of all time.
So Zach will say his number 5 slot, then I'll say my number 5 slot. We'll discuss it, and then we'll see where it lands after. So I'll start with my number 5 pick. My number 5 pick is, well, I'll explain my ethos in general about how I chose these films. I didn't want them all to just be Stanley Kubrick films, or them all to just be Stephen King films. So what I've done is I've sort of tried to go like, okay, I want a few modern ones. I can only limit myself to a few comedies. I want some old, some new, that sort of general thing. So my number 5 pick is Dan Harmon's masterpiece, Monster House. It is...
I love you more than I can put into words.
It is a classic for the ages. It does what Pixar does best, even though it's not Pixar. It does what Pixar does best. It's a funny family film, and it has some genuine moments of horror, as well as some sympathy and some heartbreaking scenes of the love story between the house and the man.
Yeah. This is, to me, one of the best family films ever made. I can remember seeing this in the cinema with my grandparents, and to me it was unique at the time in the sense that this was a family film where all 3 of us enjoyed it, both the adults and me, the child. We all found something that was engaging, something that was funny, and something that was smart about it.
It's still a film that my dad and I quote to this day, as well as my sister. It is just a feel-good film where there are genuine moments of horror, and you're like, are they gonna get out of this? Are they right? Are they safe? And then there are just moments where you just piss yourself laughing.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore this film.
This is a stupidly comedic film. Scenes where they're doing the "don't look back, I looked back," or the "but I wanted that gun" moment are so funny. They are just... It's a real crime that this movie doesn't get more attention, not just as a horror film, but just as a family and movie in general.
So that's my number 5 pick. Zach, what's your number 5 pick?
I have a slightly different ethos to that of Jake. I'm trying to include as many modern films as I can in this list, but it did become very difficult when you could just look at the prestige of the classics that I'm going to present. Yeah. Though for this one, number 5, I am going to go pretty modern. My number 5 pick is 2014's The Babadook. My personal favourite film, other than Whiplash, of 2014. This was a sensationally well-made horror film. Stupidly well-directed. There is an Oscar-winning performance in this movie from Essie Davis, and I think it's the biggest snub since Jake Gyllenhaal for Nightcrawler that she didn't get awarded for it. It's amazingly made. It kind of sums up what horror is becoming today, like how we're seeing more villains that are symbolic of certain personality traits and feelings that we can feel, with the Babadook being a symbol and like personification of grief. I think it's really engaging. It's actually really scary, and it's a stupidly well-made movie.
I can't disagree or fault you on any of those points. I really enjoyed The Babadook.
You, for a long time, were too scared to watch it. That's a testament to it.
That's something that I need to admit now. My list is... I have a lot less experience with horror than Zach because I've only recently got into this genre because I was a bit of a scaredy cat when I was younger, but now I've properly gotten into it and now I find it really intriguing on how film as an art form can scare people. The fact that I put off watching this film for a while and then I saw it and I absolutely loved it and it wasn't overhyped at all.
Yeah.
It is worth it. I can't fault you on any of the points you've made.
No, it's a really, really well done, small little Australian movie that's just so simple in everything that it does. It really doesn't try hard with all the jump scares. There's very few jump scares in this movie. It's all about atmosphere, it's all about tension, it's all about what really you aren't shown and what you aren't told. And I think it's for that reason a sensational modern horror film.
Also, the performance from the younger boy, while the character is really annoying, the boy performs it really well.
Yeah.
I was watching it with my dad and we were both like, this kid is really annoying. But there is still sort of, he is doing really well with this.
Yeah.
And the material that he's given, and he's running from his mother just doing all these horrible things. I really enjoy this film.
Yeah, it's one of the primary selling points when you just see a mother-son relationship put so well to film and explored so thoroughly, especially in the context of their grieving.
So now we move to our number 4 pick, because we're going to then say our whole top 5 lists and then accumulate them for us, our popcorn one. My number 4 pick is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh, yes.
I absolutely cannot... I've seen this film so many times because the practical effects are just outstanding. I can't get enough of it. It's just interesting how at the end they're both just sat there and they're just both worn out. You don't know if they are the creature. And the cinematography in this is amazing. The tension that's built and created, you start questioning characters that you once liked, and then just the way that this messes with your head is just outstanding. And you don't get much better body horror than John Carpenter. He's just a master of this craft, and it is brilliantly executed in his magnum opus of The Thing.
I honestly love John Carpenter's The Thing. It was very nearly in my top 5. I can't put into words how much I love this movie. It's not my favourite John Carpenter, that's Halloween. But this film is unique. Some of the best body horror ever put to cinema. And much like The Evil Dead that we were previously discussing, this film is actually a remake, and it's sensational. This is a remake of the original 1952 movie, The Thing from Outer Space, and it brings in so many new elements like the technology, the tension, and especially that goddamn famous ambiguous ending. Which one is the creature? Are either of them the creature? It just all comes together to make something that's not only a classic, but something that I believe should be taught in film school.
Just don't mention the 2011 one.
That had its moments, and at least it paid homage to the original, where it showed they were chasing after the dog. That's how the 2011 one ended, and that's how The Thing began.
But this film is unique for me in the way that it does deal with body horror, and that's why this is my gore pick. This is the one that I chose for just full-on balls to the wall gore.
Yeah, definitely. For me, this is the second best monster put in a horror film. Just for given how unique it is and how disgusting it is, whether it's the head crab, whether it's the dog out of the side of the guy's head, or the dog face that just like splits open like the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. It's just so unique, and given the fact that it could be any one of us, it's just such an engaging monster that really you could put into any kind of film or setting and it would still be interesting.
Sorry, Zach, but it's me. Oh, I'm The Thing.
No. My number 4 pick, though, is my second favourite Steven Spielberg movie, Jaws. This is the birth of the summer blockbuster. This is independent movie making at its finest, and I think this is just the most commendable thing that really has ever been made by Steven Spielberg. He worked tirelessly to make this movie a success. In the recent Steven Spielberg documentary put onto HBO, he says in this movie, every single day we wrestled against art and capability, what they could do and what they could make look good. He was just a scrappy little filmmaker, and he went out there paired with John Williams and some brilliant actors in Roy Schneider and Richard Dreyfuss, and he just made something sensational. There's not a person alive that doesn't think when they're near the water there's a shark there because of this movie. And to be something so culturally resonant for a horror movie, it really gives it props.
And how after when this film first released, the beaches were deserted.
Yeah.
How a film can impact not just one person, but impact everyone as a whole, to just, as a consensus, pretty much no one went to the beach. Just how that impacts everyone's life. It's just interesting and intriguing. It would be brilliant to research.
Yeah. I think it also is unique in the sense that it mastered the don't show the horror.
Yeah.
Although this was never their intention, there were aims to show the shark off a lot more, but Bruce the Shark, as it was so effectively named by the
Brucey.
cast, Brucey, it couldn't appear in the film as much as they intended to, so they made it something that you couldn't see. It worked out so masterfully so that when the shark did appear, like in the scene where he's throwing the fish guts into the water and you see it for the first time, it's terrifying. The fact that they pair it with the music by John Williams, his best score in my opinion, works so well with it. It made it, for me, the best movie monster of all time, because you could never tell when it was, and it was just something that you know could come up to you in real life.
I can't fault you at all with that. That's a brilliant film.
The only reason you can fault Jaws is that it gave birth to summer blockbusters, and given the blockbusters that we get today, we're sorry, Jaws, we love you.
Wonder Woman. Right, so now my number 3 film is a 2012 release that not many people have heard of, which is such a shame because it has a brilliant cast, brilliant performances. I'm not going to even reference anything that happens past the first 30 minutes because of just one interesting turn this takes. It is called Chained. It has Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays a serial killer, and he kidnaps this little boy from a young age, and he then trains him, and he says, right, when you hear this alarm, I'm bringing a victim home, so you need to sort the house out in 10 seconds, it needs to be ready for me. And then it's just how he trains this little boy to then be worked as a machine, and he's tied him against a bed. And they have found a brilliant a brilliant child actor to be in this film. And this, you could argue that this is more a thriller than a horror, but towards the end, you are on the edge of your seat. You don't know what's going to happen next. And it's not supernatural at all. You understand fully Vincent D'Onofrio's backstory, as it's absolutely brutal, and it tells it in momentous flashbacks. The direction in this, the cinematography, just everything about this film is outstanding.
I'll be frank with you, I haven't seen 2012's Chained, but it is one heavily featured on my watch later list. I really can't wait to sink my teeth into this movie. I've heard nothing but great things about it. And when you can be nominated for a Tony Award, which I believe this film was, you know it's got something really great and interesting to bring to the screen.
Because it has interesting characters, they're clever, they try and do things. It's almost like 10 Cloverfield Lane in the sense that they're not just passive, they are trying to help themselves, and they're not the silly, stupid protagonists that are so often in slashers. It's just the interesting relationship between the captain and the captor, and does he have Stockholm Syndrome, or is he just trying to get into his good books? And it's just such an interesting and captivating film to watch. I was just, even with just the dialogue, I was on the edge of my seat. I could not get enough of it.
It seems a really interesting movie, and I can't wait to maybe get to see it. Hopefully this Halloween I'll be able to. My number 3 pick, though, is my second favourite Alfred Hitchcock movie, but undeniably his best movie, Psycho. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a brief talk about. Hitchcock adapted this really small novel. He made an amazingly small but well done horror film. You don't see the twists coming with it. Every actor in it is trying really hard. They've made an amazing effort to make this film look just really creepy, really just like, oh god, you know what's coming. And it's just so famous that I think it's a crime not to feature it on this list, because it helps establish what horror is. There's no comedy show on the planet that hasn't ripped off that stabbing in the shower scene. It's on so many things. It's on The Simpsons, it's on Looney Tunes, it's on Futurama. It's everywhere. And it's because this film is just so resonant. That's why it's my number 3.
I absolutely love this film, and it's Alfred Hitchcock. You cannot go wrong with Alfred Hitchcock.
So we'll move on to Jake's number 2.
My number 2 is the release from this year, Jordan Peele's masterpiece, Get Out. Never has a horror film been so socially resonant and dealing with themes and issues, but then also creeps you out with a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Just how relevant this film is to today's society and today's culture. Because at first you could just pass it off as like an out there comedy horror, but then it has so many layers to it, and then the sunken place and the direction, the cinematography. There aren't any weak actors at all in this, and it has some genuinely laugh out loud moments where I was just pissing myself because of how funny it was. Like, I'm the TSA, we get stuff done.
Yeah.
Just, I had an absolute blast with this film, and if you haven't seen it, do yourself the honour and do yourself the favour. You'll thank me later of seeing this film, because it is genuinely one of the most interesting films I've ever seen. And Jordan Peele said that it took him 8 years from first initially thinking of the idea, and then he was writing down how people treat him in society, and then how he's seen other African Americans treated in that same way, and then how he then did that and then subverted it in such an interesting and unique way. Yeah. And it was only last week, a university in America on a film course were analysing a scene from it, and he snuck into the back of the class, and the lecturer was like, so what do you think the director was intending with this scene? And he puts his hand up and he goes, "Ooh, me, I know what he..." And then he got up to the front and he spoke about it, and he's just such a genuinely nice guy, and his sketch show, Key and Peele, just hilarious. It's a lot better than their other film, Keanu.
Definitely.
But I just had such a blast with this film. It's funny, it's scary, you never know what's going to happen next. I absolutely love it.
Get Out, for me, is one of the best films of 2017. I went into it having it very overhyped, and yet it lived up to that hype. Yeah. This is a film that, for me, warrants, amazingly, loads of repeat viewings. Not because the story is like the best thing ever made, not because the performances are sensational, which they are, but it's because of the little nuances in this film, the little clues that Jordan Peele has put into this movie, like throughout the entire film, just to like really subconsciously tell you like these people are evil, like just to put in like these little scenes, like with the bingo scene and the cup of tea scene, just to be able to make such commentaries on race and horror as a whole, and to have it be funny as well. He really made something that subverted my expectations, and that was, to me, really engaging and surprising that it was that great, because I was really not expecting for Jordan Peele to make something this amazing, and yet for me I'd put it in probably a top 10 for the year. Something that all the films have in common on my top 5 list are character, because Stephen King said it himself, if you don't care about the characters, then you don't particularly care about the stakes, no matter how big or important they are, and character's always the number one thing to look for in a story and in a narrative. And character in this film is outstanding, because
they are like real people. Well, for the most part, they are like real people. They're funny at points, they laugh and they joke, and it's just stupidly well done, excellently executed. Cannot recommend this one enough.
Yeah, it makes me desperate to see what Jordan Peele can do for the rest of the horror genre, to see what he goes on to next, if it is another horror film that he decides to do. I just hope that he takes his time, as he did with this film. He looks into how he can make it work well. He uses the inspiration that he had, like, for instance, Rosemary's Baby was a big inspiration for this film. I hope he looks at other horror films and he just sees, where can I use that kind of idea in something different and give us something great in years to come.
And here I am recommending it. On a 5 million budget, it earned over 190 million, so chances are you've seen it. But if you haven't, check it out. You will not regret it.
You absolutely won't. So now we'll move on to my number 2 pick. And it is, for me, an utter classic of horror. It's become, in years, like, a bit of a joke. I don't think enough people know fully what it is. But for when it came out, people were too afraid to go and see it. There were calls to get it banned, and there were genuinely people who wanted to call in and ask about the psychological and mental well-being of the actors who were a part of it. And that is The Exorcist. This is a film for me that is just so sensationally made that I think it's the best film to ever feature religion. And that's how, besides maybe Darren Aronofsky's Mother, I think this film redresses the dark side of religion, the demonic lore and the power of, like, religion. And I know exorcisms have become a trope in horror film that is very exhausted, but this is one that just showed it off so amazingly. This is the granddaddy of exorcism films. It's absolutely terrifying what they managed to get the young actress to do in this film, to appear as this demonic entity. It's got so many quotable lines and scenes, like when she's doing the spider walk down the stairs, when she's stabbing herself with the crucifix, or just when she walks into the room. And it's just, I can't even put into words how much I love this movie. It's sensational, and it's something that I think will scare the ever-loving crap out of you.
Again, I cannot fault you for this pick. It's absolutely outstanding. It's been ripped off to hell because of how iconic it is. An absolute classic for the ages.
Yeah. The Exorcist is so good in the sense that it ruined any chance its sequels had because it was so good. People just couldn't look past how terrible they were in comparison to the original. When by themselves they were competent and okay, it was that big and that exceptionally well made a horror film. He only made, the director for this movie, one horror film in his life, and that was this film. And he's still considered one of the greatest horror directors of all time. That's just a testament to how good this film is.
Now we go on to our number 1 picks.
Ooh.
My number 1 pick is taking a non-horror film and looking at it from a different character's perspective. I am saying Ferris Bueller's Day Off from the head teacher's perspective. He is just trying, this man is just trying to do his job. He is trying to get these students to attend his school, and they're just not listening. He just wants his job. He's just trying to work his 9 to 5. But Ferris is not making it easy for him.
I haven't even got a response for that. It's just amazing. Never have I considered that film being a horror film, because he's just such an ass to it, really. You love Ferris Bueller, whether he's real or not, but dear God.
Didn't see it like that, did you?
I did not see it like that. I think you've kind of ruined Ferris Bueller for me. Oh my God, how am I meant to argue against that? It's just...
No, but in all seriousness, my number 1 pick is, I know Zach's already had it on his list, but it is the Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Because, sorry.
It's alright.
No, because it is the definition of horror. The shower scene is iconic everywhere. Everyone knows the horror scene. And just the way that Hitchcock just has character and just focuses on character. I saw this in the summer at an outdoor cinema, and it was an experience. It was something that was such it was just amazing to see it on the big screen, outdoors. If this is ever showing on an outdoor cinema near you, seriously watch it. It is, I can't put into words how much I love this film. Hitchcock is such a pioneer in cinema as a whole, and this really shows how much he's changed horror, because it doesn't rely on gore, it doesn't rely on anything, it's just suspense, creepy characters, and then a twist that if you haven't seen it before, you would not see coming, because of the masterful direction, the masterful little Easter eggs and little nods and subversions, and throwing you off the scent. It is amazing.
I've seen this film 10 times now, and I'll be very soon watching it for my 11th for this Halloween. It's that good a movie. It's just, in every sense of the word, well made, and you cannot fault it for anything that it tries to do. For me, it's one of the best Alfred Hitchcock films ever made, and it's one of the best movies ever made.
Cannot fault you with that at all.
So now we move on to my number one, and it is...
I think I know what this is.
Yeah.
Gonna be.
To not overuse the word iconic, I'm picking Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Where do I even begin with this movie? You know this film is good when there can be a 90-minute documentary conspiracy theory film made from it based on only 2 shots of this film. The ever so good Did Stanley Kubrick direct the moon landing conspiracy? But jokes aside, this is a film that its author of the original book, Stephen King, did not enjoy, but in all honesty, screw him. This film is just so good without him. Everything that Kubrick does for this movie is done in the right way, and is done in the way that all horror should be. It features amazing actors. What Nicholson and Shelley Duvall went through to get into their characters for this movie was unlike anything most actors have gone through. The set for this movie, the Overlook Hotel, is my favourite set for any movie ever made. It's that iconic and well done. It even set fire in real life, and yet they still were able to make a movie from it. It creates tension masterfully. You cannot watch that film without feeling the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. You cannot watch that film and not look into Jack Nicholson's eyes and think, God, he's really going to do it. It creates iconic scenes. The scene with "Come and Play With Us Forever, Danny," the bear man ingratiating the butler, the photograph at the end, and of course the "Here's Johnny." You can't get more iconic scenes of horror than The Shining. But most of all, it's mystery. I don't even think Kubrick himself knew what he was trying to do with that ending with certain scenes in this movie. He was just throwing it in because it was all amazing, and because it all leaves your own unique interpretation to make for it. It's another reason I love this film so much, because I've got a different interpretation for what it all means. Jake's surely got one, and then people listening at home will surely have their own interpretation for what the whole Shining is about. I know Stephen King certainly has his. But regardless, Stanley Kubrick made a masterpiece here, and I don't think he ever did anything better. So it's for that reason that I put my number one film for horror as a whole as The Shining.
Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I cannot fault you. There are 5 very good films, and The Shining can't even put into words how momentous it is.
You know it's good when it blows all the other 4 picks of mine out of the water.
Especially Jules. Poor Brucey.
Oh, Bruce.
But I find it just fascinating and confusing, because at the time it was shunned. It was nominated for a Razzie. I can't remember if I actually won it or not, but just the fact that everyone, when it first came out, just thought, this is weird, this is not what I'm used to. And it's because it was outside people's comfort zones, because it showed this man and his descent into madness, and it almost did what Breaking Bad did, but decades earlier. an absolute horror classic.
Yeah. You couldn't have made a more typecast actor at that point than Jack Nicholson. Everyone knew him as, here's Johnny after this movie, and yet he was still able to go on and do The Joker, The Departed, so many good films. The Departed, so many good films, and that's just a testament to how excellent he was in this film. Stanley Kubrick's direction, twinned with the amazing score for this film, and the cinematography. Oh, the cinematography for this movie really do just all married together make just the magnum opus of Stanley Kubrick.
The cinematography in this is so good, they even used shots of it in the first cut of Blade Runner.
Wow.
Did you not know that?
I did not know that. That's actually just filled me with a sense of joy that I cannot put into words to think that they used that.
You know, in the first cut, spoilers for Blade Runner, the first one, Rachel and Deckard go off into the sunset and they drive off.
Yeah.
They use the establishing shots.
You
of,
are
like,
joking. Oh my god, man, that's the same shot.
Yeah, they use the same shots. And
oh my god, that's actually depressing as hell. Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow,
I'm surprised you didn't know that.
That's really, really good, that. One final comment to make in regards to The Shining, though. You know it's good when the best ever Treehouse of Horror, The Simpsons parody is The Shinning. Be careful, you don't want to get sued. So now it is time for us to accumulate our own list for sour popcorn.
Right, so we went away, we thought about it, we discussed it, we brainstormed, many a whiteboard was used. Now here is the Sour Popcorn Podcast's top 10 horror films of all time as of October 2017. And ones that we haven't necessarily spoken about today in great detail, because they are some of our favourite films we would like to speak about properly in an episode, so expect them in the future.
Yeah, a particular example is Psycho, a film that we both love, which you can expect to hear at great length a lot about in an Alfred Hitchcock themed episode coming very soon.
So I'm going to say one, Zach's going to say one, because we've written down a list, and then we'll just do a little sentence justifying why it's there and why it is one of the best horror films of all time. So number 10 for us is Monster House, because it's, for both of us, it's a very close to our hearts. We both love it for very similar reasons, and it's Dan Harmon.
Yeah. It's a personal pick, and while it's got one or two problems, we couldn't really just stand by and not have it on the list.
If we weren't going to have Shaun of the Dead, we had to have Monster House.
100%.
So that's our comedy entry.
At number 9, we have Chained. I thought it was important to include this in the list for everything that it promises to be when I finally see it, and for all the high esteem that Jake gives it.
I cannot recommend it enough. Because of the characters, because of the cinematography, because of the direction, just all of it. If you haven't seen it, 2012's Chained, Vincent D'Onofrio is amazing. Watch it. And then number 8 for us is The Babadook. I really enjoy this film. It's very classical horror as well as being very contemporary, with the personification of grief, and just masterfully done, with some brilliant, scary, tense moments. Was there a monster? Was there the Babadook? Or was it just the mother?
The greatest modern horror film of the modern age. It's a real film that deserved more press and more awards than it received. The Babadook is one for every Halloween. Speaking of Halloween, number 7 is John Carpenter's Halloween, the film that invented the slasher genre, the film that created Michael Myers as one of the big three of the characters of horror. It is an amazingly well directed, amazingly well written, and amazingly well shot horror film that to this day still stands out as an amazingly scary movie.
Did you know that for the Michael Myers mask, they just got a Star Trek mask of William Shatner and then just painted it?
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's brilliant. And then at number 6 we have this year's Get Out. Both really enjoyed this film. I think I liked it a bit more than Zach did.
Yeah, but it is, for any problems I may have with it, it deserves every kind of congratulations that it can get. It was amazingly well done. It had to be on here.
And how it just relates to modern society and all these modern themes and issues, just masterfully well done. Absolutely brilliant.
At number 5, we have my favourite Ridley Scott movie, Alien. This 1979 classic is, without a doubt, one of the best sci-fi films ever made, and more importantly, one of the best horror films ever made. It's so good, it blends the genres together just so well that you can't even put into words. The shock of it coming out of the chest was something the cast didn't even know it was going to happen. It's so well made, it's so good, it created such a franchise. You can't not have Alien on this list.
Alien is a film that we both didn't put on our top 5 list, even though it is both one of our favourite horror films and films in general.
It's one of my personal favourites of all time.
Absolutely love it, and that's why it's number 5 on our list. But then number 4, which is another film that delves into a lot of gore and a lot of scare tactics and has a brilliant ambiguous ending, is another John Carpenter film of The Thing. We both absolutely adore this film. There are a few problems with it, I can admit that, but it holds a very dear place in my heart. I cannot express how much I love this film.
The Thing is a real sensation, and when we were discussing The Evil Dead earlier, I thought to myself, I can't think of a remake that's as good as this Evil Dead, and I was completely wrong. It is John Carpenter's The Thing that is the best remake. That then moves us on to number 3, what was my number 1 and is still my favourite horror film of all time, The Shining. It's got some problems which may put audiences off it, but all in all, what Stanley Kubrick achieved here was an art house classic. It's got a cult following unlike any other, it's really well made, and it's just an icon of cinema that The Simpsons ripped off too well.
Next weekend, I think it's next weekend or this coming weekend, at a cinema in Cornwall, there's a 4K remaster of The Shining showing.
We are seeing it. We are seeing it.
It's like a 2-hour train ride.
We are seeing it. We are seeing it.
So now I've just broken Zach. I'll discuss how much I enjoy The Shining.
We are seeing it.
Kubrick's direction and his his 1-point perspective, and just looking down, and this film is studied in film schools for a reason. It's absolutely masterful, stupidly well done. Love it, completely love it. Jack Nicholson is always a delight to watch, and his poor character of a wife, and the actress, her hair was falling out. She had to do take after take. Brilliant. That then brings us to our number 2 pick of The Exorcist. I think Zach said everything that needs to be said about this. It's absolutely brilliant. The gore, the whole shock factor of when it came out, the big cultural phenomenon, amazingly well done. You'll struggle to find a fault with it. It holds up today, and the way that it shocked its audience, amazing.
One of the few films on the list that I'm still to this day quite nervous to watch anytime I put it in. The Exorcist is a real classic that really has a lot of difficulty for anything to try to live up to it. But nevertheless, there is still one film that we think knocks it off that top spot, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. It's one of the best films ever made, shot in black and white for a perfect reason, a beautifully adapted story, amazing characters, amazing direction from this master of suspense. This is a film that's so good that it can even spawn a 5-season series in its honour, Bates Motel. It's for that reason that Psycho is number 1.
Psycho is the Sour Popcorn podcast's number 1 horror film, because it doesn't rely on gore as amazing as the practical effects can be. It doesn't rely on that. It doesn't rely on anything. It's just characters and what they do in the situation and what brought them there. Just a classic. So just a quick rundown of the Sour Popcorn Podcast's top 10 horror films of all time. We have Monster House at number 10, and number 9 is Chained, and number 8 is The Babadook. 7, John Carpenter's Halloween. 6, Get Out.
Number 5 is Ridley Scott's Alien. Number 4 is John Carpenter's The Thing. Number 3 is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Number 2 is the excellently well-made The Exorcist. And number 1 is the classic Psycho.
So this week's quickfire question, I'm going to say, with it being very now notorious, it used to be an interesting thing, but now it's very notorious with being a cheap trick in horror films. My quickfire question this week is, what is the best used jump scare in a film? It doesn't have to be a horror film. It just in a film where it's not just a cheap trick and it's actually worthwhile. And my pick is from the 2016 release Midnight Special. I've gone on record in the past to say that this is my favourite jump scare because it doesn't have any build-up, you don't see it coming, and it just leads into a sequential shocking turn of events. It's where, spoilers for Midnight Special if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's a brilliant little film where Joel Edgerton comes out of a flat where they're taking refuge in, and then he just gets shot. He has a bulletproof vest on, but I had no clue it was coming. I was absolutely gripped to the screen afterwards. It made everyone, I was watching it with my parents, everyone jumped, and it wasn't a cheap trick because it then made you start shaking for the rest of what was going to happen. An absolutely brilliant jump scare, masterfully well done, and it shows that it's not just a cheap trick and it can be used effectively. So, Zach?
Personally, I believe that the jump scare that you're referring to was done recently, very similarly in the 2017 release Wind River. While not to the same level, it was very entertaining and it did give me a shock. However, I'm picking from a horror film because I believe that's where jump scares come from best. It's where they've made their home, it's where they've made their nest. I'm picking a horror film, and that film is John Carpenter's Halloween. I'm picking this for a very specific reason because it harkens back to the age of when jump scares were good. These days in horror films, all you receive with a jump scare is quick flash at the screen, a hard string of the music, and then a loud crashing sound. That is what has made jump scares cheap. They are littered in horror films, they're everywhere, and they're poorly put together. John Carpenter's Halloween, though, is very different in this sense. This is one of only 4 jump scares in the entire film. This is the scene where the detective is looking around the bush, doesn't know it's there, and then the man comes up behind him, and it's just his friend. This is an amazingly well put together scene because it not only sets up the great suspense of the camera work, you can't see what's behind him, and you're desperately trying to look forward to see what is coming at him. And in that moment, it doesn't fill the scene with a loud noise like, it's here! It's just a little brief jump, which is what the horror film needs to make. The horror industry, in fact, needs to make jump scares as. They don't need to be the primary selling point of your movie. They need to be a little nuance that you can add on to your scare scene. This film was just able to do that with this scene. He just jumps, the audience jumps with him. It's not a scene that's reflected on too much, because in horror films today, you get the jump scare, you're then focusing on that for about 2 to 3 minutes, and you don't see what else is good that comes next. In this scene, it does this little scare, and then it reflects back to what the movie is going on with, and the plot carries forward because of it. So I would say it's that movie. With Midnight Special, I think, as I say, it's a shot that it didn't surprise me as much. I didn't see it coming, but it wasn't something that I focused on too much, and I think it's been done as good in other films.
But I liked it because it then, I liked the jump scare in Midnight Special so much because I didn't see it coming, and you finally feel like everything's going right for the protagonist, and you're like, yes, right, then I'm going to get on the road and then this, and this. But then he just gets shot, and then it...
I mean, it's good when you see the puffs of fabric coming out of his chest, and it's like, damn, he's been shot. It's a good shot.
And you feel the weight of it. And then it's not so much that it's big because it was quite small, but then just puts you on the edge of your seat for the next sequence. It's just absolutely devastating. And that's why I personally chose Midnight Special, but I agree with you, I've seen that.
Yeah,
scene
I
from
think
Halloween.
your shot is then overshadowed by the scene that follows, whereas I think my shot is more special because I think it harkens back to an age of cinema that we no longer have, where these jump scares were used so sparingly and with such great effect, and not only that, they were well made, whereas I think now horror culture is just littered with them, and they've come to dominate the screen rather than add to the suspense and fear, as they did in John Carpenter's Halloween.
But personally, I feel that the next scene didn't overshadow it, it just complemented the jump scare because it then got everyone looking, it got the audience's attention. If you weren't already captivated, you were now. And so I felt that it very much complemented it, but that's my opinion.
I think for that reason then we're going to have to go to the deciding factor. Heads or tails?
Heads, please.
Tails, yes!
No.
I'm very upset that Midnight Special didn't win because that is an amazing shot, but I think given that it's spooky week,
Yeah.
you've got to go for horror.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm not disappointed that I lost to Halloween.
So that's now 2-3.
Right, so, Zach, what's Appertaining?
Well, Stranger Things Season 2 is out and I'm diving headfirst into it. I've watched the first 4 episodes. I'm absolutely loving it. It maintains the hype. It masterfully brings back the horror that I love with the first season. It brings in a really cool kaiju element, and it's great to see this amazing cast of characters come back. Also, given that it's Halloween, I've just been having a complete and utter horror binge. I've gone from A to Z, watching all kind of horror films, indie, art house, blockbuster, whatever I can get my hands on. I've been watching it.
I've been very similar to Zach. With half term, I've managed to watch a number of films. Most of them being horror, because now I've found my new love for horror. I'm invigorated, I'm loving it. And I've also been playing some horror games I've been trying to get through. Resident Evil 7. Oh my goodness, I hate the Baker's family. Just why?
They are the best and scariest villains of the Resident Evil series.
Absolutely brilliant game. I was home alone playing it the other night and I heard creaking from upstairs. I didn't know if it was the surround sound. I didn't know if there was someone in my house. But I was terrified. An absolutely brilliant game.
To add in a little addition to my What's Appertaining, I similarly have this week dived into and managed to finish Little Nightmares. Really amazing indie game. Really, really well animated. It almost looks like it's a Leica animated movie. It's really all sort of stop motion movement, really quite tense and some amazing chase segments, and it's just a really arty, great game.
Something that I rewatched after loving it so much the first time, I then decided that it's time to revisit it, is Neil Gaiman's Likely Stories that Sky Arts produced. And there are 2 episodes, each one's I think about half an hour long, and in each episode it's split in 2 with a 15-minute story in each. So the whole series has 4 stories and each one is unique, each one is interesting. It's Neil Gaiman, you know what you're getting. It's going to be quality. Absolutely love it. Johnny Vegas is in the last one, and what this show does with a limited budget is outstanding. Absolutely love it.
So, that will now bring us into our final segment for the show this week, and that's the weekly recommendation. We're going to shake it up a little bit because this is Spooky Popcorn, and we're each going to recommend a horror film this week, one that we feel is really great and more people should be getting a hold of. So, Jake, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is a 2001 film. I would say it's not desperate to see Halloween. I would say it's the day after, where you still want something a bit of a thriller, but you're sort of on the rundown, so you're dying it down a bit. And that is the 2001 release, Frailty. It has Bill Paxton, his feature-length directorial debut. It has Matthew McConaughey, both give really interesting performances, and the questions that this raises about religion in general is something that at this point hadn't particularly been seen in film. And it has interesting twists and turns with a satisfying conclusion. The late, great Bill Paxton is a very competent director in everything that he's done, everything that he produces. There are interesting shots, there are interesting transitions. You can tell that he wanted to tell this story, and it's something that he had worked on for a long time because he loved it, and he gives a brilliant performance. It has aged. I'm not going to lie, I was rewatching it last night, and it has aged. It's very much of its time, but it's still very much worth a watch.
I actually really enjoy Frailty. I think it's a really great Matthew McConaughey movie, and it's always fun just to see him in a film going, all right. My film, however, my recommendation for this week is you see it on Halloween night, because this is a sensational thriller. I feel that the director for Don't Breathe probably watched this and was inspired to make his film. This is, to me, one of the most underrated horror films I think ever made. This is the 2009 movie Eden Lake. There has never been a film out there that I think Jake will enjoy more, especially when it comes to horror. This stars Michael Fassbender and Kelly Riley, and the little boy who grew up to be Cook in Skins and that really weird prison drama. But don't let me put it in a bad light. This is a stupidly well-made horror film. If you are British, you will never find a film that is more relatable, because the horror characters, the villains in this film, you have no doubt seen in real life, or potentially even know. This is a terrifying film where a couple go on a nice weekend camping trip and discover hell in what the youths of today can do. Fassbender is incredible in it. I honestly say this is his best performance. What he's able to show in it is so unfortunate, and like Don't Breathe, director James Watkins is able here to make so many twists and turns that you're trying to work out where the plot's going to go, that you're terrified when you just realise, oh no, how could this have gotten worse for her? But ultimately, it's a bloody disgusting film. The two characters in this film go through shit. Kelly Riley starts off the film in a fully lovely white dress. By the end of it, she is head to toe caked in blood and mud, and it is all shot beautifully in an England forest. It's a beautifully underrated English horror film. Get out there and see it, because Eden Lake is something you should be watching on Halloween. You have a group with you, they're going to be silent when they see this film, not only because it's so damn relatable, not only because it could happen in real life, but because it is so well made. If Jake gets out there and sees this, I know he's going to be wanting to talk to me about it. So my recommendation for this Halloween is James Watkins, Eden Lake. That is it for Spooky Popcorn this week, as we'll be back next week to Sour Popcorn, the traditional review and news podcast that we all know and love.
I'm keeping that in, you're not retaking that bit.
That's fine.
Until then, because I'm sad I didn't say it last week, go away. Didn't see Ferris Bueller coming, did you?
No, I did not. We are seeing it.